and fulfilling and productive life. Proposed in late 2007 by Her Highness Sheikh Hamza bin Nasser, World Autism Awareness Day was adopted by the United Nations and supported by all member states. As part of our efforts in Qatar Career Development Center to support people with disabilities and young people with autism in particular, we are hosting a set of webinars throughout the month of April to raise understanding, acceptance, and support for young people with autism and their families. In our last webinar, we explored what it's like to live with autism. Tonight, we will examine the support systems within family and education. To set the tone for today's presentation, we will start with some useful information for our esteemed panel guests and attendees. First of all, the webinar will run for 1.5 hours. It will be recorded and shared with you later. We appreciate your active participation through questions that you can type in the chat box. We will start tonight with an introduction about QCDC and our distinguished guests. During the first hour, we will cover issues around, first of all, the family system, raising neurodiverse children, balancing family work demands, and how Islamic values provide refuge and support to overcome stigma. We will move forward to the school system with key strategies and top tips for supporting independence, communication, and life skills in school, at home, and the wider community. We will close with the community at large issues, how to connect with other families and the larger community, how to manage transitions, how to increase employment opportunities for neurodiverse people, issues of inclusion in the workplace, and the example of the career readiness program applied in Awsaj social communication classroom. We will conclude this session dedicated in approximately 20 minutes to answer your questions. Before closing, we will provide you with an event survey, so please take the time to fill the questionnaire as your opinion is of much value to us. Now, a few words about us and also our guest speakers. Qatar Career Development Center, or QCDC as we are known, is a member of Qatar Foundation under the Community Development Division with a mission to empower Qatar's youth to respond to the requirements of the Qatar National Vision 2030 by instilling career guidance within Qatar's socioeconomic culture. QCDC supports students to better plan their career paths in line with their potential and the future needs of Qatar's labor market. It also equips parents and career practitioners with career guidance, knowledge, and information needed so they may best advise and guide the youth. QCDC also runs the Career Readiness Program, a proposed framework for the enhancement of career guidance provision for students with mild and moderate learning challenges, including autism. The program was piloted in 2017 after a memorandum of understanding was signed between Qatar Career Development Center and Awsaj Academy, which both are members of Qatar Foundation. This is the 4th year that the program runs. It includes cross-structural interventions and project-based learning activities integrated in the school curriculum, such as workshops, motivational talks, field trips, volunteering, and social responsibility projects, among others. Senior students participate in internship opportunities and actively apply the employability skills they acquire. Later this year, we expect also to launch our all-inclusive employment project, supporting employers and people with disabilities to integrate in the labor market. It is time now to introduce our panel guests, Ms. Sabika Shaban, Ms. Samantha Campion-Gibson, and Ms. Sara Coleman. So a warm welcome to all three lovely ladies. Starting first with Sabika, who is a mother of 2 neurodiverse children, aged 6 and 10, and the founder of the Specially Abled Community, a platform that was built on the basis of information advocacy for the disability world in Qatar. She is the academic journals and publications specialist at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Qatar Foundation, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in Islam and Global Affairs, focusing in disability studies in Qatar. She was recently selected as the regional member representative for the AEHD Committee for the Design Post-COVID Humanity Program at HBKU that explores the intersection of moral values and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Sabika continues to participate in various initiatives that discuss sustainability and disability discourses. Welcome, Sabika. Next up, Sam is an autism specialist working within the Learning Center, and she has 23 years of experience working in mainstream and special school settings with her previous position as principal of the special school in the UK, supporting students with a range of needs, including autism, severe learning difficulties, and others. Sam is the Qatar Foundation focal point for the Ministry of Public Health's e-learning autism website. She is a member of the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacies Accessibility Forum, as well as a member of the Qatar Early Bird team. Welcome, Sam. And last but not least, Sara. She has worked as an educator in Qatar Foundation since 2013. She has worked with children ranging from the age of 3 to 17 at both Awsaj and Readiness academies. Prior to Qatar, Sara lived and worked in the United States and in the state of Oregon. She received both a master's in teaching in general education and a master's in special education with a focus on autism spectrum disorder. So a warm welcome to all of you ladies, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. It is a pleasure to host you all three in our panel discussion today. First, I want to start with you, Sabika, talking about the family system. And we look forward to hearing from your experience about the tales of raising two beautiful neurodiverse children.
Thank you so very much, Efrosini, and thank you, Paige, and the whole QCDC team for having these conversations, and especially in such a wonderful month as Ramadan, where it's all about learning and really re-engaging with our values. Well, as you mentioned in the intro, I do have two children, a daughter who's 10, a son who is 6. They are not always beautiful. Sometimes they can be very frustrating. Sometimes they can be very taxing, but most times they can be very inspiring to me. And that is something that I have discovered along the way in raising both of them with their very different and very specific needs. My children, in a sense, when I look back, they've kind of made me rather than the other way around, and given me a sense of purpose in almost anything I do right now at this point in time in my life. But when I look back at their journey as they grew up, when my daughter was born, we spent a month in the ICU, and we would feed her milk through an NG tube. And there was a portion in time when we were signing and, in order to communicate. But now she speaks a mile a minute and swims faster than I can in a pool without stop. So, in similar fashion, when my son said "mama" for the very first time, and it was years after a typical child says "mama," and that really taught me appreciation and gratitude. But then I also realized how far we've come along when at this point in time, he just tries to beat his own record in lip syncing his favorite songs. So what it comes to the fact is that the children, any child has their own way of approaching their obstacles and overcoming them. And all they really, really need is a cheerleader and the right support system in place. Now, I know all of this sounds like unicorns and rainbows with all these achievements, but it never was and never has been. The journey to where we are today and where we are still to go is very, very long. It involves a lot of compromise and tears and frustration. And there's also a lot of surprises. There's unexpected angels you come along the way who help you out. And there's a lot of these wonderful discoveries of potential. My friends joke that I'm a serial optimist, but it literally has been not only a survival mechanism through this entire decade, but an empowering one. So I've known that if I had known everything that we've gone through in the last 10 years when I first became a mother, I'd buckle under the pressure on the first day. But today it kind of makes me really, really proud to look back and see that not only myself, my husband, but my children are so strong and resilient. We've proven this, and it's not done in our own merit. We have the potential, but we've also learned to look for opportunities to grow, forge ones where none exist, and connect with people in order to help us out, and just basically be alert to all the potential around us.
Beautiful said. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sabika. And I think an important question for all parents is, how do you manage to balance family and work demands, especially having two neurodiverse children?
Any parent will tell you that it's not easy. And when your child has very specific needs, there's a lot of uneasiness on how do you build that support mechanism and trust when you're not there. And the guilt that is so typical of working mothers amplifies in the context of a child who has very specific requirements. So I won't speak on behalf of fatherhood, but on behalf of motherhood, what I've come to realize is that we do a disservice to our role when we start looking for flaws in them and allow others to highlight flaws to us. It's not that it should never be done. There's always places to improve the way we handle our parent roles. And it's always a very good spiritual exercise even to continue to improve ourselves in whatever roles we take on. But as mothers, we make certain choices and we need to believe and have faith in those choices. So ultimately what it comes down to is an admission to yourself that balance is a myth, that compromise is inevitable. So when I started working, I knew that the quantity of time I spend with my children is going to reduce. So I started working on the quality of time. And when I started studying last year, I knew that many things will slip through the cracks. But in accepting that and not beating myself over every missed item and knowing that this is just a phase, it pushes you through. My daughter is my greatest cheerleader in my studying journey. That relieves me because all children need to see parents have dreams and grown-ups working hard to try to achieve those dreams. And it relieves me because I know that I can't be there for every football game or swimming session, but at least I'm highlighting the importance of education or working hard to strive for something that I really believe for. So I think that really helps you understand whatever mythical balance you're supposed to strike.
And given the holy month of Ramadan we're in right now, how we can say that we can connect with Islamic values to find refuge in times of distress and also to support us in overcoming stigma?
It's really important to broach this question because in my view, Islam was never meant to be a faith that's restricted to regimented practices, 5 daily prayers, fasting in Ramadan, reading the Quran, so on and so forth. It's a system of these actions, but also a manner of living that is imbued with values, with ethics, with morals. It means that it's an Islamic behavior. If we go to a mall and see a child throwing a tantrum or being difficult in a play area where your own child is playing and not confront the parent to remove their child or so on and so forth. And it's an Islamic behavior when you've got a parent, for instance, trying to apply to a school, in a mainstream school for their child who has specific needs, but to give them that dignity and that option that, hey, maybe we don't have a system, but let's try and see if something can be accommodated. And if nothing can be, to give them the dignity of using the right language and the method. All of these things really, really matter. So it means in whatever capacities we live in as community leaders or actors or in private companies or governments or what have you, I think we really have to understand that we all have contributions to make. And there's, of course, if I were to choose a quote, there's this beautiful quote in the Quran that, we all kind of really, really tend to understand, especially in very difficult times, that, God does not test us beyond our capacity. And I don't really remember when I first consciously absorbed it, but I do remember how I felt when I first consciously looked at that quote. And it's been engraved into everything that I do now, because there are moments of weaknesses, but more times than not, it's really taught me that because I'm being only tested to my capacity, this means I can take this. And each time there is a medical complication that comes about, or, we get a call from school due to a behavioral infringement. More times than not, I've learned that we can get through this. I mean, it's been a mantra of sort. And if I can just quickly also pick on another very important aspect, I mean, there's a very frequently quoted verse in the Quran that says, that God made the male and the female and made you peoples and tribes so you may know one another. And it's usually quoted in the context of racism and, gender issues and cultures and nationalities. But I really think that it also applies in the case of abilities, that we are all made different so we get to know one another, and that diversity is our beauty. But unfortunately, we still need to prove that to the communities that we live in. We still have people who use destructive language like abnormal or mentally disabled when the person is simply autistic, simply has cerebral palsy, is deaf, has sensory issues, or a million other possibilities. So I think that that if we really, truly embrace our inclusive values of Islam, we start viewing people as not different, but unique.
That's a very beautiful conclusion. Before we move forward, I just want to give to you, Sabika, the opportunity to summarize some of the most important lessons you have learned so far through your motherhood journey.
You know, of course, you learn so much whenever you are put in situations where you have to really push hard and think through. I think one of the most important lessons that all parents need to learn, and what my children taught me was, and I'm so grateful to them for this, is that they shattered my worldview that was fixed on the rat race. And it's been so healthy mentally for me in adjusting my expectations and getting out of that rat race. As in, who cares if your child isn't toilet trained at 6 months, you know, or who cares if your child can't talk, as long as they can communicate in a healthy manner. And often the answer to the who cares was society cares, or people care, or my family cares. But really, I think we've started, it's not a rebellious, but I think it's very healthy to say, so what? You know, it has reframed my thinking that so what happens. And we start focusing on strengths, and we start focusing on how to work with the weaknesses in a healthy manner. And I've learned to shrug things off when it really doesn't matter. And instead we focus on things such as, you know, what matters to us. Like, it matters to me that my children love to learn. It matters to me that they have a place to learn. And it matters to me that they learn to connect with people and take joy in every moment that they get. And I think that is what we need to focus on. And I'm really grateful to my children to teach me that.
Well, thank you so much, Sabika, for these beautiful reflections. We do appreciate, and I'm sure also our attendees will connect and also resonate with your points. And I want to give now the opportunity to Sara and Samantha also to share with us their valuable insights. And we will be sharing their presentation, the presentation they have prepared for today. So the floor is yours. We want to hear more, Sara and Sam, about the support system in education settings.
Well, again, a big thank you for inviting us here this evening. It's a real privilege to be here with you. So yes, we wanted to really just talk about how, you know, we are preparing our students for life and to have that successful future. And really, we'll be touching on so many things that Sabika has already brought up, and talking from her perspective as a parent, and very much how we would be working in partnership with parents and that school education setting.
Excellent.
Okay, so during our last QCDC webinar, we had the real privilege of listening to Dr. Stephen Shaw and Dr. Temple Grandin. And for me, I know it was just phenomenal that we were able to listen to them both. And Stephen Shaw's piece of advice, I asked him the question, as an adult, what would you have said to your 10-year-old self? And this for me was so powerful in his response. You know, he said, my advice is to focus on your abilities and life gets better. And what an amazing philosophy to have, and certainly from an educational setting as well. You know, this is something that really for us within education, it's so important. You know, when working with our children and young people with autism, focus on their strengths and their abilities, and this will support their life journey. And it's so important. And it just summed everything up really when we're looking at that educational philosophy.
Absolutely. We were so fortunate to have both experts with us last time.
Okay, so in this slide, we see a cartoon, and the man is saying, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. You know, and it's notable that I want to also point out the looks on the faces of the animals here too. You know, it's like, sometimes you do get that look from students and parents and teachers too, like, okay, how are we supposed to manage this? But it's really important, and Sabika did point this out, you know, autism is a difference and not a deficit. And it's very important that we as teachers, you know, and parents and community members approach this that way, that it's a range of tools. It's not one size fits all. And that it's not the children fitting into the curriculum or curricula, it's the curricula fitting the children, and being patient with that process.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
So for a child and young person with autism, you know, when we really think about that successful future, we need to have a curriculum that really promotes independence, facilitates the communication, and really supports the mental health and well-being. And this really has to be completely embedded within your curriculum. You know, when we think about independence promotes self-esteem and really facilitates that learning. And when we're talking about independence, thinking about students within a classroom environment being able to choose their own tools for whichever subject they may need. So to be able to go and get their own pencils, carrying their backpack into school, you know, it has to start from a really young age. And, you know, dressing skills and being able to dress themselves. You know, when we're thinking about our future pathway, you know, into adulthood, and this is the bit that we are always thinking about within an educational setting, what's that journey going to be for our students as they grow up? So the promotion of independence has to be fundamental to any curriculum. In supporting communication, again, in life, this is key, being able to be able to communicate, you know, your own needs. For a young person with autism to be able to communicate exactly what they need, what they want, how they're feeling, being able to take part in a conversation and keeping themselves safe. Again, fundamental within any curriculum. And when we think about mental health and well-being, for many of our students with autism, you know, the world can be a very scary and confusing place. And so anxiety levels for many of our students, many of our children with autism can be up here. And we really need to make sure that throughout the day, we're giving our students time to be able to decompress, time to relax, time to just be, and just to be enjoying something that they want to take part in, to be able to facilitate that really positive mental health and well-being. So again, these aspects really have to be embedded within any curriculum before you get to the academics. And that's a really important point.
Mm-hmm. And you know, we do say that, you know, behavior is communication. And I think, you know, understanding the mental health and well-being needs of our students is the first thing that we should be doing, you know, in the classroom. This is our primary job, is to support the mental health of our students. Okay, this is a quote from a mother of a 25-year-old young adult with autism. For me, I felt it was important to focus on skills and behaviors which would hopefully ensure Matt could be as socially accepted as possible and encourage life and communication skills rather than academic achievements. My focus was about doing my best to ensure he could stay safe, accepted, communicate his most basic needs as a minimum, and be happy, and then build on from there. So I think this is a really poignant statement, and I think other parents have this feeling as well. Many of them do, that really it's being safe, being accepted. The order of it is important to see this, that safety is first and then acceptance, and be able to communicate his needs in whatever way he is able to or prefers to communicate. So this is an important goal, important to keep in mind, even for parents with the youngest children, that this is what they're looking for.
So again, we have a quote here from a mother of 3 young adults with autism. So they are aged 21, 23 and 25, and really focusing on that mental health and autism piece. And one of her children actually has quite significant mental health difficulties, and certainly that presented itself within the teenage years. And so her quote is, "Mental health is linked to physical health, only it is much harder for others to see. A broken leg can leave one unable to walk for a short or long time and may heal fully, leave one with a limp or even unable to walk again. And so it is with well-being. Sometimes one needs an extra hug, greater structure, rest, or even a complete break. And if well-being isn't taken seriously and treated in the most appropriate way, the mental health suffers just as would physical health if one had to get around on a broken leg." And as we've mentioned previously, mental health and well-being is really critical in supporting our children with autism. And as I've mentioned before, you know, for some of our students and for some of our children, anxiety levels may be heightened throughout the day, and that may be because of sensory needs. It could be because of being completely overwhelmed with the task that's being asked of them. It could be due to difficulties in being able to communicate their needs. And so it's really crucial that we support that relaxation. And within that school setting, we try and have aspects through the day, planned through the day, where the children are able to actually have that decompression through that day to be able to support their mental health. And you know, what we don't want to do there are lots of adults with autism who talk about autistic burnout, and so they would get to the point where, because of their anxieties may be so high throughout the day, by the time they get home, they really just have that mental that meltdown, I should say, sorry. And that could look like different ways for different adults with autism, different children with autism. It could be that for some children they're very fatigued. It could be that they are very tired. It could be that they will have a meltdown and they'll have significant behavior challenges. So it really is so important that throughout the day we have that time for our children and for our students within the school setting, just to be able to go and have a few minutes to have that relaxation and stagger that throughout the day. So it's so crucially important. And again, for some of our students, we know that after school, they may be taking part in one-to-one therapy sessions. And so they've had a long day at school, they may then go into therapy sessions, and having that time to be able to come down after that intensity is really, really crucial.
Absolutely. Mental health has come again in the center of the attention because of the pandemic, and especially because of the stressors and all the disruptions that we have experienced throughout the last year. It's becoming a more hot topic in the discussions around the world and in different settings. But it proves once more how important it is, especially for young people with disabilities or learning challenges, as well as their parents who carry a significant weight throughout their lifetime. So Absolutely. Thank you very much for highlighting this important topic.
Okay, so then we wanted to share with you the Autism Education Trust, and this is the Good Autism Practice Guide. And within the Autism Education Trust, there are 4 themes and 8 principles. So the first theme is that we really have to understand the individual with autism. And so this includes understanding the strengths, interests, and challenges the autistic child and young person may have, and then enabling the voice of the child with autism to really contribute and influence decisions that may happen within that educational setting.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it could look practically like understanding a student's preferred interests and really getting to know them. And it does take time to do this. Oftentimes we want to hurry on to the structured activities, that's the structure of your school year or your unit of instruction, but it's very important to start with understanding who the students are. So do they like robots and puzzles and certain video games or foods? Because you can lead those interests into other interests that are connected. So if a student really likes the library, why do they enjoy the library? It's because of books, but what is it about the books? And what does that mean for them? Maybe they want to be an author, or they like film, but why do they like it? How can they see their role in that? And I think that it builds that trust with the student too, and it can take quite a long time to do that. But I wanted to share a story about wait time, because we hear this phrase sometimes, maybe parents with younger children hear that you have to give a child wait time, especially if they're second language learners. We have to give that space. But I have had some amazing experiences with wait times that are quite long, months and weeks, where we're talking about friendship and building friendship skills. And one day a student in the class asked me, why another student didn't remember him from a previous class. And so we had a discussion about this, and the student said, well, he was bullied before, so maybe he has trouble trusting other people, and it was astounding to me because I had been waiting, we've been talking about friendship skills, we've been talking about all of these topics, and here he has revealed, a completely developed understanding of how someone else might feel. And so it really opened this window, but I thought, if I tried to hurry things along with this student, we might not have gotten there, so it's just really important to consider this wait time, and it helps you as a parent as well. Sabika talked about this as a parent, being patient with yourself too. And so I want to encourage parents and other teachers that this wait time is so important.
Okay, and then our second theme is looking at positive and effective relationships. So that collaboration with parents and carers is just so crucial and critical to the success of our children, our students with autism. And really, we see parents as partners. We have to be a partnership, school and home working together, because quite often there may be some behaviours that we may see in school and are also happening at home. And we need to really be talking to each other to make sure that we can support that child and all be on the same page. And then also workforce development to support those children with autism, to be looking at their life journey and where we're going with that pathway. And it's all for us, it's about teaching those fundamental life skills to be able to look at what's that pathway going to look like for that individual student.
Yes, and we will talk more about our QCDC partnership after this part of the presentation, but it is really important to develop those connections with the rich outside community that we have, even within Qatar Foundation. But yes, that collaboration with parents is very important, because they could see things at home we don't see in class, and vice versa. It's really important for them to see themselves as successful outside of the school walls. And also I encourage parents to think of any way or any connection they have to an outside opportunity, and to really start developing that early in collaboration with the school.
And then we've got the third theme, which is enabling environments. So thinking about leadership and management that promotes and embeds that good autism practice throughout the educational setting, and also an ethos and environment that fosters social inclusion for children and young people on the autism spectrum. So really it has to be embedded from that systems level right the way through the school, which is so important again.
Yes, and when I was considering this enabling environments, I was also thinking about how, the things that benefit autistic students or students with autism benefit all students, actually. So this is important to remember, that these individualized routines and life skills and social emotional learning are good for all. And when those are embedded in every part of the school, then it's easier to include students in those settings.
And then our fourth theme, looking at learning and development. So really that targeted support and measuring progress of children and young people with autism. And then the adaptation of the curriculum, teaching and learning to promote well-being and success for those children and young people with autism. And, again, it comes back to the being able to teach those specific skills that our children with autism need to be able to cope in life, for that future life journey, and how we are adapting that curriculum. As we said earlier, it is about the individual needs of our students and what strategies can we put in place to be able to support them. How do we change and adapt that curriculum to be able to suit their needs? It's not about that student fitting into a curriculum that we have already. It's about really finding out, how can we support this student? What is their interests? What are their strengths? Okay, so then therefore let's change and foster that curriculum to be able to suit their needs moving forward, to be able to ensure that successful life journey.
Yes, and how can they display their understanding and knowledge? It could be in a variety of ways. It doesn't have to be through writing or even reading. Students can display their understanding through art, and you can scribe for them. These are important things. You can take videos of them so that they are comfortable expressing their knowledge, and they know that that's safe in your classroom environment, in the school environment. And speaking of the growth mindset piece, as Sabika was speaking about this, having your child see you learning, or see other examples of learning. And I try to show those as much as possible in my classroom, and to give my students examples of how I've made mistakes and how I've had a growth mindset, and why this is important and it's safe to make a mistake, and to share frustration. And that is an essential part of any curriculum, is developing that flexibility, because that's what especially children with autism need, is that sense, more sense of flexibility in their lives.
Thank you so much for all these great points that you have raised. Obviously, we will have more opportunities to discuss about the shared experiences that we have with students through the Career Readiness Program. I want to go back to you, Sabika, and speak a little bit about how we can connect with other families in the larger community. I know that you have been driving for the past few years this amazing platform of yours, the Specially Abled Community Platform. So if you can share a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much for bringing it up. Well, I think one of the things that really got me through are other parents. And parents can be the biggest supporters and enablers of other parents. And that was part of the reason why the specially abled community was brought about in the first place. And it was based on the backs of hundreds of conversations over several years with parents and specialists on different resources out there in Qatar. And I think I've personally always had a very inquisitive soul, and I've always had this aptitude to dig up information under the heaviest of rocks. And often I managed to really enjoy some of these opportunities, and then realize that it wasn't going through to everyone. And so I started a group just three years ago in Autism Awareness Month in 2018. And it was just about 15 of us. And it was just a pact to exchange information and be able to bridge that information abyss, not even a gap. And 3 years later, we have about 700 people on the group. These are parents, they're researchers, educators, therapists, and absolutely any stakeholder who's interested in knowing more. I think, and this is not the only one, there are a few others as well, also created by parents who have recognized the same essential need. Because what we all collectively realize is that if there is one thing that can really unhinge a parents, especially when they're struggling to figure out the future of where their child is going to go, it is it is not knowing who, what, where, when, and how. And this can truly jeopardize the child's opportunities for a more successful future when their key enablers, and in this case, I mean the parents and the guardians, are unable to make informed decisions just because of the lack of knowing what's out there. And so hence, this is one of the ways the platform tries to bridge this. It's one of the key messages it tries to give is that we need to connect with other families and learn from them, and in turn, help others as well, because you are somebody else's angel too.
It's incredibly true. And one of the things that, at least in my experience, I have noticed is, except from staying curious, is also undressing usually from our armors and becoming more vulnerable, connecting also with other people. That was one of the ways we got connected at first place, because we wanted to discuss about these issues. And also our common interests prompted us to communicate and discuss more. So being open and communicating also about such important matters with other parents is also crucial to create this kind of community that is so important in sustaining us.
Absolutely.
And I want to give the opportunity back to you, Sara and Sam, to discuss a little bit about managing transitions. So how we can increase the acceptance, appreciation, and action within the school community.
Okay, so when we think about transitions, we have to be thinking about not just the bigger, huge transitions, moving into school, into a school setting, and then moving out of the school setting, but thinking about those small transitions, day-to-day transitions, from waking up, getting dressed, brushing teeth, those smaller transitions to going out to a family member's house, being able to go to a park, how we are supporting those transitions. And like we keep on coming back to that mental health piece of being able to support the student and the child being calm with those transitions, because quite often when we're looking at our child with autism, a transition, no matter how small, might be quite overwhelming and could actually be, have quite an emotion within that child that we need to support. So when we're looking at those transitions, it's about how we use visual supports, how we use, we could be using timers, we could be using, those reassuring voices, being able to use interests and those strengths to be able to support those smaller transitions. And then when we're looking at those bigger transitions, having those transition plans in place so that when we're thinking about the student moving into school, knowing as much information as we possibly can from parents, because parents know their child inside and out. So they are, they are such a source of information about their children. So again, coming back to that openness and that honesty of parents being able to share that with us, because quite often I think parents will say, I don't, or feel that they don't want to share fully the challenges that they may be having at home. But actually with us in a school setting, we have heard and work with so many children who have autism, who have so many different challenges, that we are very supportive of hearing that openness. So actually the more information we can have of any child coming into our school setting, the better. So, again, it's coming back to that, working with parents as partners, coming into that school setting, and then moving on to that transition, moving out of that school setting, and moving on to that work-life aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sam.
And I think sometimes there are unexpected issues with transitions that we need to work out. So what Sam is saying is absolutely true, that we need as much information as possible. And, you know, it's the parents can say as well, and should say, you know, these are our priorities in our family, because what I think is important for a student from a transitional standpoint, and what they feel is important, is it might be completely different. So this is why it's important for parents to share, okay, this is an issue because, you know, we want to go to this family's home, and, you know, there's difficulty every time. So how can we, you know, practice that kind of transition at school? Because maybe there's something we can do with that, that makes it okay. I mean, and also letting students know that, you know, one of my students asked, is it okay for adults to play with toys because he really likes this specific toy? I said, of course, you know. So now it's fine for him to come online because he knows that he can bring the toy with him and turn on his camera. You know, so this is really important for students to know that what they need to transition is, you know, is great. It's okay. There's actually nothing wrong with that. And then of course the school to life transition, if that's work, if that's volunteer, if that's community, if it's, you know, going to university, you know, all of these things are important, and we need to know parent goals very early, you know, elementary school, middle school, we should be, you know, revisiting these conversations.
Thank you very much, Sara, also for sharing some beautiful insights from your experience. And going to the next question, and please, all three of you, feel free to address that. So in terms of increasing employment opportunities, I want you to reflect on the role of the parents, the school, as well as what we need to from employers as well.
So from a school point of view, you know, as we talked through our presentation, throughout a child's career in school, we're thinking all the time about what will that student need to be able to be successful in life. So looking at those functional life skills, you know, Sarah and I were having a conversation the other day when we're talking about in that work life, whether that may be university, whether it's going to hold down a job, or that's going into a community setting, a student would need to have their hair brushed. They would need to you know, they would have their hygiene. They would have to have their teeth brushed. They would have to have the hygiene aspects of life moving into their work life, whatever that may be. So actually, us supporting those functional life skills, being able to communicate, to have those communication skills, to be punctual, to be able to be on time, all those things that are needed in life, we would be working on through in a school, an educational setting. And yes, of course, academics, but those functional life skills are the most important thing for that journey moving forward, really focusing on those independent skills, you know, travel training. Are our students able to independently move from one area to another area? And we're really looking at that independence. You know, now we've got the amazing metro system here in Qatar. So are we able to support our students to take the metro independently from one place to another? You know, what an amazing opportunity we have here to be able to support that independence and that communication. So when we talk about functional life skills, can our students read the metro signs? Can they read a metro timetable to be able to support them having that independence in the future? So that would be how we would be looking at our students and how we can support those functional life skills moving forward.
And Sara, from the experience that we have with the career readiness program and your students also, I think it would be very valuable to share some of, you know, the experiences that we had in terms of the internship opportunities as well as the employers aspects.
Yes, you know, prior to in the pre-pandemic times when we did take field trips outside of the school, we did, you know, we had guest visitors in as well, talking about how they started their business, why they started their businesses, you know, what inspires them, as well as the trips outside of school that we were able to do to coffee shops and restaurants and farms. And these experiences for the students were so, you know, visceral for them, you know, even riding on the bus and and eating lunch together out and asking the questions. The student, this happened actually, some of these trips happened 2 years ago, and the students can remember very clear details about their experiences there, the people they met. Like, it's very important for students to meet people who are inspiring, you know, Qataris, people in their community who are doing inspiring things. And then, even though we weren't able to take trips this year, what we've done is we've woven those experiences into the lessons, that when we talk about what tools do people use on a job, what types, you know, what types of communication, you know, do people have at work, what tools are they using for communication. um, so just because we can't go on a field trip doesn't mean we're not able to speak about all of these things. So it's actually been remarkable to see how much they look forward to these times when we have these presentations, and how it really sticks with them because it's real. They can imagine people at work on the phone, right? So, and of course now they use the computer all of the time. So they are actually applying these different communication skills. I mean, it's one of the benefits of this time is that our students are much more comfortable with technology, which is something that's so important um, in this time. So, you know, it's very important. It's been very successful. And as far as opportunities outside of school to work or volunteer, um, you know, a lot of times we think, okay, work is 40 to 60 hours a week. It's 8 hours a day. We have to do that. For our students, we need to reframe that for ourselves, for the community, for the families, that look, what they want is independence and acceptance, right? And safety. And the parents want this too. So that could mean 1 or 2 hours, 2 times a week in a preferred location. So if you have a student who likes the library because he likes to be around books, then let's try and create this opportunity. And it's not so overwhelming from a transitional standpoint because the student already likes this place. What work can he do there in that place? So it's just about being creative and, you know, and also pushing on the different systems to accept, you know, it is about educating um, employers, other teachers, other parents, for that acceptance, from any angle you're able to do that. So it's very successful, and we need to share those successes for sure.
Inshallah, we're hoping when things ease a little bit to be able to amplify the outreach of the program and engage also more schools, more students, more employers. Just to reflect a little bit on the last part, on the experience of the students, I want to share a little bit about the experience of the employers, and especially from all these young Qatari entrepreneurs who joined the program and opened the doors of their businesses to the field trips and the visits of the students. We saw an amazing receipt, and people were really not only grateful to be part of this experience for themselves, but they felt also a very strong responsibility as part of this community to make sure they leave no one behind. So there are some amazing lessons that we were able to take. And I want to give also the opportunity to you, Sabika, as a parent, just to share how much important it is for you to ensure that later on your child will be able to to move forward and be part of the labor market?
Thank you for that question. And I believe all parents will be able to relate to this, that one of the biggest fears when you have a child who has very specific requirements, the biggest question mark is what's going to happen in the future. Oftentimes you face one obstacle after another. First, it's something simple like trying to communicate or trying to see if we can gain any mobility or not, figure out solutions. And then it's about education and trying to find a place to learn. And then it's about finding a place to belong. And so in that sense, it is so instrumental in terms of knowing how important a place of belonging can contribute to a person's self-esteem. And also, not only that, it is also about trying to create this mindset change of the people around you. It's about creating more visibility of people with different needs. And all of that can come around when we have these programs like yours that is making an effort to open those doors up and to kind of get them to the forefront. So undoubtedly, if you ask anybody to pick up any random person in Qatar and ask them, have you ever, gone into a shop and been served by someone who has a specific need? In this case, I suppose visible. Or, have you ever encountered anyone and had an interaction with them? And more times than not, it will be not really, or maybe seen them around the corner of my eye, but not really engaged. And so I think this is also part of what programs like yours can help, is to increase that visibility and normalize it, and allow us to see people as contributors in the community and not just takers.
Absolutely. Sara, what is the reflection of your students on their experience with the Career Readiness program?
As I said, they really enjoy it. They talk about it. They wish we were going out right now. But they have a better understanding. Okay, let me back up. One of the things I used to assume before really engaging with students in their community, from their standpoint of what their community is, I make assumptions about what they do with their families outside of school, right? So, or what is their experience of the mall with their family, or even the majlis with their family, or the other family homes. But you actually really need to backtrack as a teacher, and consider that they're not experiencing these places the same way as when they're with me at school. Just because I take them to the mall, right, and they go to the mall with their family, it doesn't mean it's the same place when they go. So I think it's important that, okay, we would go to the student center to visit you, and even when we reflect on those times, it's different than if they just go and get a burger with their friends, because of the conversations we're having constantly about, oh, what is the person doing at the burger place? What are the different jobs they have? Or when we visit QCDC, what was this like? They're opening their frame of reference, right? When they're in school, when they're being guided by us. And so it's just really important as a teacher to not make any assumptions. When I ask them, okay, in the majlis or in the desert, when you went to these places, what was that like? And they now expect these questions. So they have to pay attention to these details. So it's the same thing when we talk about the experiences we've had, right? And this is why I think they remember them, and they're able to apply these concepts so clearly, because they're stepping out of their usual frame of reference.
And how we can encourage parents to carry over the growth mindset that we instill in these young people. so they can help them also carry over the skills, not only inside the classroom, but outside in the house, with friends, with family, when they go into, you know, the wider community, how we can provide them with techniques and tools to continue this kind of reflections and stretching.
Right. I think that parents need to think of their community. And I know that culturally, sometimes this can be difficult, especially if you have students with, you know, you have children with needs. But really, however we can do that, engage them in conversations with people who could give them those opportunities, you know, and it depends on how old the child is and what their needs are and the family structure. But it's very important to be honest with, you know, as honest as possible, understanding some limitations. And then, you know, when you're out with your child, discuss these things. Where are we going? You know, how did we get there? What do we notice at the store? You know, if we, you know, we took the students to the shop and we're actually looking at the prices of items. Okay, how did these items get here? Are they made in Qatar? Why is it better to buy things that are made in Qatar? And really have these conversations, and, you know, not in an overwhelming way, because it really depends on there's some children have difficulty with going shopping and that kind of thing. But then how can you, you know, have that kind of experience? How can you push that child and then celebrate that and help the parents celebrate that? You know, one of my parents said that, you know, we've talked about food so much, and I really enjoy food and cooking, and we always talk about this in class. And so this parent shared with me that, you know, they were able to take their son to a different restaurant and order different foods, you know, and again, it's the wait time, because how long has this been happening, this conversation? But again, it's that stretching piece. And then who knows, maybe he'd want to work in a restaurant or own a business, have a restaurant. So I think it's just important to think of every little angle you can.
One of the things, again, from the experience that we are having with the Career Readiness program, is to encourage everyone to avoid labels, putting tags into the capacities and the abilities of our youth with autism and other learning challenges or disabilities. We might be really surprised in the course of time, understanding parts of these young students and interests that we could never imagine. So I want to encourage everyone to think outside of the box and also experiment with different issues, different interests, providing them with different experiences, obviously considering the sensory issues and other matters that are important for autistic children, but definitely providing with opportunities to go outside of the box. So it's one of the most fascinating things, being able to check with them different projects, different learnings, different reflections, and how this can be translated and applied into occupations. It's astonishing. We are receiving a great number of questions, and I want to make sure we provide the opportunity to address all of those. So I just want to open the floor now to address some of the questions, and I will be making sure that we cover them all. So starting with you, Sam, what are the chances of ASD symptoms that develop in a child after 4 years old to be fully normal when they gain adulthood?
Now, I saw this question in the chat, and it's a really tricky question to actually answer, because really it depends on those interventions, the programs, you know, that early support that is needed. And every child is unique and every child is individual and different. So it really depends on the needs of your child at age 4. But what I would say is that early intervention is absolutely critical. So having that early support for speech and language, for OT, and having that provision really for the school setting as well is really crucial. And all the things that we've talked about, promoting independence, promoting communication, are the key factors then for your child. But it's a really hard question to answer when I obviously don't know your child, I don't know their needs. But what I would say is, again, many parents have asked me this question: will my child ever speak? Will my child ever be able to go to the park without actually getting upset? Will my child actually go on to university? And what I would say is, the world is your oyster. So we never know. We just don't know what will happen at age 4. When we think about Temple Grandin, a few weeks ago during our webinar, if you've ever seen Temple Grandin's movie, at age 4, her life looked very different to the projection that she may have had to what it is now. So you just never know. You never know. But early intervention for sure, and having that support at an really early age is crucial.
Another question for you, Sam: is ADD and ADHD similar, or do they overlap in some way?
Yeah, so they overlap. So ADD, attention deficiency disorder, and ADHD is attention deficiency hyperactive disorder. So yes, they do overlap. Yeah. And sometimes you can have autism and ADD or ADHD. Autism can be comorbid, so you can have various different conditions as well as autism. So yes, they do overlap.
We have some more questions coming in. What are your views on biomedical healing? Many parents report of healing their children using biomedical protocols. I'm not sure about this question, but if you have any experience with those.
I don't have any experience with those, but what I would say is autism is a lifelong condition. And so while we do look at that early support and our life experiences and chances for our children with autism, can be enhanced because of the support that we've all talked about here this evening. Actually having a cure, is something that is up for discussion really, because autism is a lifelong condition. So yeah, I'd say.
There is another question about a young child case that the condition has deteriorated. We're talking about a young female child who was very intelligent. However, parents were aggressive at times with the child, and she might have changed because of the pressure and not coping up with other kids. So Sabika, to you as a parent, and of course to Sara and Sam also to add some of your comments on that. As parents, what is the best approach when we are dealing with difficult behaviors with our children?
Thank you for that question. I think there is never one right approach, because as diverse as the entire community is, there are just as many diverse approaches, but there's also unhealthy approaches. And I think that's what we need to be conscious of. I think part of the frustration that parents feel are maybe a lack of information or knowledge on the various ways that they can tackle difficult behaviors. I know personally, we've had a whole host of behaviors that we've had to manage over the years. What really helps is, again, that I bring it up, it's connection with parents. It's also keeping the channels with therapists and specialists open to be able to consult them, and not just consult one, consult as many as you can. speak to as many people as you can, consult forums. You become an expert researcher in this role as a parent. So research, look up different strategies, and ultimately try not to relay your frustrations on the child. Try to ensure that you mitigate it within your own role.
Absolutely. And I think your platform also has a wealth of different resources that parents can refer to when they are dealing with such issues. So I see also that you posted the link on the chat for more people to come on board. We are so grateful. Back to you, Sara and Sam. When you have a child with speech not fully developed and with sensory issues and behavioral issues, what do you do to help the child?
Again, being able to support. Go ahead, Sara.
I was just going to say, and then you can continue. Exposing the child to as much language as possible, and in as many ways as possible, right? I mean, I know there are lots of apps and this kind of thing, but really face-to-face communication is the best from a variety of people, using a lot of expression, and it depends on the age of the child. Sam, you can add your details.
Yeah, again, I was going to say it depends on the age of the child and looking at different techniques that you can use. But I think one of the biggest aspects, certainly when we're looking at younger children, is to be able to get into their world and how we are able to have that communication within their world. So coming back to their interests, you know, how we are able to get down onto their level, their communication. And a mix of using that verbal language as well as visual supports. What we know about young people and children with autism is that visual representation of the spoken word is much stronger because of that lack of imagination, actually having something, having the symbol, having the picture, having that there, especially if you've got a younger student, it would support that language development. But yeah, absolutely, that really trying to support getting into those interests and getting into their world.
Thank you, Sam and Sara. And back to you, Sabika. Where do you see your kids 20 years from now? And what are your efforts to engage them in the labor market?
Well, firstly, they're only 6 and 10. So I really thought about them as they haven't hit their teens yet. What I will say is that what life seemed to me 5 years ago is very different from 10 years ago, is very different from what it's turned out to be today. So I'm open to various possibilities. As I mentioned, I am a serial optimist. So I really hold on to that belief that there will be opportunities in the future. My job to engage them is to ensure that I'll try my ultimate best to give them spaces where they can learn, in spaces where they can connect with people, because I think in this day and age, networking and human connection is extremely important. And so I'll tell you, if I may, very quickly, because it was a really important point, in a related point that you brought up, Efrosini, when you said about how we really need to, about the labels. And I'll just tell you a very quick quote, a very quick anecdote, because it's so fresh in my mind, because it just literally happened 3 days ago with my daughter. And because of recent conversations I've been having with Qatar National Library and their incredible librarians. And you know, what we tend to do is we look for labels in the kind of opportunities we give our kids. So we look for instance, a special activity or an activity with special, target audience. Now they had a random activity listed on their events website on poems, on how to write a poem on Ramadan. It wasn't even for her age group, it was for 11+, but I said, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna sign her on. What's gonna happen? She might listen, she might gain something, and then, you know, if she can be extremely shy sometimes, she might just write a few words in the chat, and that's it. So I signed her up, she attended the poetry workshop. much to my amazement, at the end of that hour, not only had she listened carefully, which was completely unexpected, she had actually written her own poem on Ramadan, which was also very unexpected because she normally doesn't like poetry. And when prompted, she recited it in front of a group of mainstream students who were also developing their own poems. Now, for me as a parent, that was beyond amazing. But what it was not about waiting for labels to indicate to me as a parent where my child should go. It was about just taking whatever opportunities that are available and making space for your child. And now I know maybe that is something I could work on for a while. Maybe that is something we can explore. So, I mean, just sharing that we also create barriers on our own, and we also need to learn to kind of push those barriers down and create a society that's not mainstream versus, you know, special. It should just literally be one diverse community, and that's about it.
Talking about the unexpected, I can't help but reflect about my latest experience and interaction with Sarah's student. Imagine having neurodiverse students all together in one class who are able to articulate not only thoughts and feelings, but also who are able to pronounce such a difficult name as mine fully, compared to neurotypical adults who can hardly pronounce my name right. So absolutely unexpected things, amazing things. Sometimes, or we often underestimate the ability and the skills of these young people. And I want to invite all of you just to share your thoughts about how we can best advocate for our children.
I do a lot of researching online in the various autism communities, especially like autistic adults, and how they want to be represented. It's really important to look at the voice of autistic people, not just and the parents, of course, of those children and young adults, and really look to them for their own experiences, the way they were treated, the memories they have, and I think that really helps with advocacy, honestly. Back in the United States, I worked with an adult man, and when he was younger, he did not vocalize his thoughts, okay? But he could tell me everything anyone had ever said about him and around him. And, you know, they were great things and they were terrible things. And so I think that it's really important to look at that voice in the community, in all communities. And this will help lead the advocacy, because you want, you know, it's very powerful. It's very powerful to see what reflections adults have. And also, I just think not thinking of the limitations, and it can be very hard, you know, it can be very difficult, not thinking in terms of the limitation and the labels, but what can they do, and encourage children, because they actually can sense how you feel about them, even if they're not expressing that. So this is how I advocate, you know, listen to what autistic people have to say about their experience.
Yeah, I would replicate that. It's so, you know, powerful to hear an adult with autism speak about their experiences, and then really trying to support parents to have that openness and honesty of talking about their challenges as well. But I think it's really about celebrating those little milestones, as well as the big, huge achievements within a child's life. And talking about not just focusing on the challenges, because we are all very aware of the challenges that our children may have, but really supporting, like Sabika has just talked about, what an amazing achievement for your daughter, and really talking about and highlighting those achievements throughout a child's life, for sure.
Sorry, if it's about advocacy, as a parent, there's so much that we can do, honestly, and I think it's about also one of the most important things we can do is educate ourselves, and educate ourselves also in terms of how we talk about disabilities, how we talk about our own children. And I know I see a lot of these wonderful and very intriguing comments in the chat and in the Q&A. And there are times you want to hold on to that belief about autism being, a disease or something like cancer that we need to overcome, or so on and so forth. But I think we really need to change our mindset about what autism or any other condition is. It is, we need to accept it. And I'm not saying not to be open to any mitigating, approaches, but what I am saying is that we need to stop treating it as a disease. We need to start thinking of it as a package. So for instance, you've got a teenager with a certain, who has diabetes. We're not going to think about it as, how am I going to overcome this, this evil that is, part of my child. We need to think about healthy strategies. And if at one point in time there is no supplementary assistance required, that's incredible. But if there is, then we also need to accept that as well. And I understand that these are very different conditions, but there is a whole host of conditions. So we're just speaking in very general terms. So we really need to educate ourselves, and we also need to start using really healthy language, because when we start using destructive language, it really changes the way we approach things. If we start thinking of these things as abnormal or whatnot, it blocks us from thinking about good opportunities. So that would be a personal level advocacy.
Thank you, Sabika. It's a really important aspect. So where do we see the challenges and the kind of perception that we decide to adopt really will help not only in the present, but also in the future far and ahead. And back to you, Sam, how neurodiversity is different from autism? And does this entail different approaches?
So autism is autism, and it kind of encompasses the whole neurodiversity. So you may be neurodiverse with having different conditions, different learning challenges, different needs. So it's just one part of neurodiversity.
Thank you, Sam. I'm also mindful about the time. And I see a couple of questions coming into the Q&A box regarding the Career Readiness Program. And Sara, if you would like to comment on that, and of course, I will support you in covering those questions.
We would love to develop this for everyone. Right now, we've kept it as a small project, but the goal would be that this is something that can be implemented with other teachers and other schools. And right now it's where we are, but it should be open for, that's our goal, right? Efrosini, is to have it open for more teachers and schools.
This is one of the things that we are currently working. So far the program is implemented within the Awsaj Academy and for the social communication classroom students. But obviously, because of the success and the demand also that we see on the other side, one of the things that we are currently working on is to develop a comprehensive handbook, and also with the support from the Learning Center and our colleagues there, to make the program accessible to more teachers, educators, and specialists in other schools, so they can learn and adopt the framework and the tools that we are applying. So for more parents, for more students to be able to benefit from these interventions. So please stay connected with us. You can follow us on the social media. You can always contact us through our emails at QCDC. and in Awsaj. And we will make sure when the program is ready to scale up, to engage as many as possible who have expressed their interest to know more about that. And just some final thoughts, because we have only 5 minutes. So please, Sabika, Sara, Samantha.
Thank you so much. I think we've covered a lot of really interesting aspects today. And again, I'm really appreciative of what you do at QCDC and the vision that you have for this program, which is so incredible. And it's a niche that has not been touched. But as far as I can say from a parental perspective, I have to reiterate some messages in the sense that connecting with other parents is so incredibly important. This world is extremely complex. It has a lot of obstacles on for you. So it is not going to be an easy road. It's not an easy road anyway, being a parent, bottom line. But when you have to think about additional aspects that you are not, that is not the norm, then you really, really need to work extra hard in order to make this work out. So, and one of the best ways to educate ourselves is also to learn from other people's experiences. And I think there is much to say when it comes to at least those who are people of faith, since we're in Ramadan, to really embody some of the values that your own respective faiths relay. So at least for myself, I know that I really, really need to continue to bear hope. They say, we say that God is the best of all planners. So we really need to have that trust in the future, but then not just have blind trust. We do need to act, because that's part of that contract you have with the divine. That part of the contract is that you're going to do your bit. So I think I will just end in the fact that having children who give you that additional push in parenthood is simply part of that contract for you to be stronger and to connect more firmly with the values that your faith relays.
Beautiful, beautiful set, Sabika. Thank you so much. Sara?
And to reflect on what Sabika has said about the faith aspect, because of how this time has fallen, in previous years, a lot of times students haven't come to school during Ramadan because it's closer to the end of the school year. But this year, because we are online, all of my students are coming. And so we have spent a great deal of time connecting these social emotional concepts to their faith. So we've talked a lot about those values, about doing good in the world, and that these things don't cost money, and that you can do good for your family and others. And I feel like, yes, it helps me to take the labels off of my students, because we're talking about a shared experience. And it's such a joy to plan in this way, because it's so relevant to them. They could talk forever about their families, their faith, their communities. So it brings a lot of hope. And so just to be in that hopeful place is great every day, because I learn so much from my students. So just learn from your children, learn from your students. If you're a teacher and this isn't your area of passion like it is, and you feel, distraught by something with a student, do the research, talk to people who can help you, so that you don't get into a place of feeling down about your students. Really embrace that hope.
And from you, Sam?
Hey, I just want to finish by saying that obviously all children and young people with autism are unique. At the end of the day, if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. We're talking about a spectrum of need. And so all our students, all our children with autism are individuals, and they are children first with autism. So, it's really about supporting the individual needs of the child and their uniqueness, and that autism, their differences should actually be celebrated. and certainly not seen as a deficit.
Thank you so much. Before we close, I want to share a kind reminder to all our attendees to fill our post-event survey. And you can use pardon, the survey link provided in the chat. I just want to share a warm thanks to all of you for attending tonight our session and engaging in this important discussion. Our sincere appreciation to our panel guests, all three lovely ladies, for their insightful views. Last but not least, credits to my colleagues, Ms. Paige McDonough, Career Development Officer, and Ms. Munira Al-Ali, Senior Digital Platform Specialist, who work behind the scenes supporting our online programs, and of course to the rest of the QCDC team for their valuable contributions. I hope everyone stays healthy and safe. Best wishes, Ramadan Kareem, to all observing this session. And we do appreciate joining us tonight. Please stay tuned, and we look forward to connecting with all of you again soon.